And the victim was found, 3 days later, if the records are accurate. And she was found with her pants like pulled down and her shirt was lifted up. And, I'm just trying to gain a better understanding of how she was found that way. Is it possible that you were so heavily inebriated that you...
We are watching the parole hearing of a man, a monster, who killed his wife, was convicted in 2008, and was given a 15-year sentence after 5 years suspended. Yep, he's already up for parole. The family comes to speak and protest, and it's quite a shocking hearing. But with that, we'll jump in.
Good morning, Mr. Perillo.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, thank you. My name is Parole Officer Logan. Today is Friday, April 5th, 2024, and this is a hearing of the Connecticut Board of Pardons and Paroles. The following board members are present this morning, and by stating their names on the record, certify they have reviewed all statutory and required documents and available pertinent information in preparation of this hearing.
Good morning, Mike Pohl.
Good morning, Joy Chance. Good morning, I'm Panel Member Page.
Also present is Office of Victim Service Advocate Hamlet Williams. Please state your name and inmate number for the record.
My name is Russell Perillo, 294-689.
This hearing is being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Russell Perillo, 294-689. He is serving a sentence of 20 years, executed suspended after serving 15 years, followed by 5 years probation for manslaughter first. And he also has a consecutive sentence of 10 years, executed suspended after 5 years, followed by 5 years probation for escaping custody. The total effective sentence is 30 years, executed suspended after 20 years, followed by 5 years probation. As of today, records reflect the parole eligibility date of July 29, 2024. There is victim input in this case. There is an offender accountability plan for the offender. It has been reviewed and shows he has completed domestic violence, voices, administrative segregation, tier 2, tier 4, anger management, alternatives to violence, basic, advanced, and the workshop, people empowering people. He is currently enrolled in college courses, and he's in the CDL program, and he works in AP as a janitor. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system, the offender's overall score falls within the moderate range of risk for recidivism. Mr. Perillo, this is your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole. You may begin.
Okay. I want to thank all of you for your time and consideration in this hearing today, with allowing me to tell my story. It means the world to me to have this opportunity, as I want to extend our most sincere apologies to the Jackson family. I am truly sorry for what I have done. I want all of you to know that I think about Wendy every day and miss her with all my heart. There is no possible excuse for my actions, and I know my words cannot do the harm that I have caused. My hope is that the Jackson family can see my remorse and know that I am committed to change. As a child, I grew up in a very toxic environment. My father was a user of alcohol and crack cocaine, which caused a lot of fighting between him and my mother. I remember a lot of yelling and my mother always being upset. There was a lot of emotional and financial abuse in our home that was hard for me to cope with. My parents separated when I was about 13 years old. I grew up living with my mother during the week and staying at my father's on the weekends. My mother was good to me and my brothers. She did her best to make sure we had a place to live and everything we needed. The only thing my mother wanted from me was to go to school and stay out of trouble. But I liked staying at my father's more because I got paid for working on cars with him, and I had older friends who I preferred to hang out with. By the age of 15, I was living with my father and dropped out of school to work on cars full time. I knew my father drank alcohol and smoked pot and crack cocaine regularly, but I didn't understand that it was a problem. I looked up to him because he taught me good work ethic and how important it was to have mechanical skills. Unfortunately, I didn't realize my father's drug addiction ran his life, and all his hard work was to pay for drugs. There was a lot of drug traffic in and out of my father's house, including my friends whom I started smoking pot with. This slowly progressed into using LSD and cocaine. By the age of 17, I was smoking crack cocaine and PCP on a weekly basis with my friends, but my father didn't know. I didn't realize my young life was on a downward spiral and how my thought process was so distorted. I allowed my guidance to come from drug users and friends who could care less about me. I grew to be very selfish and impulsive. I didn't think about how my actions affected other people, including myself, as this led to an arrest record for driving offenses, larceny, and misdemeanor drug possession. I moved back to my mother's house at the age of 18. I thought I was doing well because I had a good job and a lot of friends I sold drugs to. This allowed me to support my habit, give my mother money, and still be able to do what I wanted. But in reality, I was doing bad and hiding it from my mother, thinking I was a young man who didn't have a problem. When I was 22, I met Wendy through a friend I sold drugs to in July 2001. Me and Wendy started hanging out all the time and partying at bars and nightclubs. A relationship developed between us, but it was all about partying where it came to an end after about 4 months. Shortly after me and Wendy broke up, I got arrested in New York State on January 17, 2002 for drug sales and possession of a firearm. On that same day, Danbury, Connecticut police executed a search in my mother's residence where I was still living. The police seized cocaine, ecstasy pills, and weapons my mother had no idea I was hiding in the house. As a result, the Danbury police issued arrest warrants for the seizure that were pending throughout my New York incarceration. When I made parole in New York, I was stipulated to resolve the Connecticut warrants, where I turned myself in June of 2004. I posted bond and was home for 7 months while going through the Danbury court process. During the 7 months I was home, me and Wendy ran into each other in Danbury. We started talking, and that led to spending time together, which turned into using alcohol and cocaine on a frequent basis. Then he moved into Wendy's Danbury apartment where things were good for a couple of months. After that, we started having arguments about spending time and using drugs with other people. As our drug and alcohol use progressed, these arguments turned
Mr. Perillo, can you just be careful with how you're characterizing your relationship with the victim in this case?
Okay.
What we're asking for
Yes.
is why you're suitable for parole.
Okay.
Okay. So if you could get to that to that place.
I'm sorry. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So I am truly sorry for the pain I have caused the Jackson family and how deeply it affects their lives. I stand before you with deep regret for my actions and with a full understanding of the harm I have caused. Wendy was a beautiful woman with the biggest heart whose life was cut short because of my reckless action. I truly wish I could take back what I did and hope the Jacksons could find it in their hearts to believe that I also suffer from losing Wendy. I live with knowing that I am the cause of her death and failed as a man to seek help for myself and for the problems in our relationship. A failure to identify my poor behaviors in our relationship and allowing it to get as bad as it did will forever live with me. Also, I deeply apologize for my escape from the Litchfield court on November 9, 2007. I owe the entire community an apology for that day. There is no excuse for my actions, regardless of how scared I was to face the consequences for Wendy's death. I deeply regret all that I have done to affect the lives of the Litchfield community, the Jackson family, my family, and myself. The time that I have spent incarcerated has changed the way I see life. In the first 5 years of my sentence, I received 4 disciplinary reports and went to segregation for each one. The last 2 times of segregation, I really started to realize that life is all about the choices I make. Everything I do to the people I associate with have an impact in the future. With this sense, I started to rebuild myself and signed up for any programs available to me, as follows. Cheshire, 2009, completed Tier 4 drug treatment. I had to complete in-cell assignments for this program that made me think about my drug usage and how that usage controlled my life. This program helped me realize that I had a serious drug problem. It helped me understand that I was powerless over my addiction and that I needed to address it. Unfortunately, in 2011, I allowed myself to fall to my addiction and received a ticket for intoxication. After the ticket, I started attending NA meetings, which helped me realize staying sober is a daily process of self-vigilance. I really started to consider my life without drugs and made the choices to remain sober. Today, I have been clean for 13 years and hold firm to my sobriety. McDougal, 2014, completed domestic violence, DV. Participating in this program helped me understand that I was an abuser. Watching victims speak on video about the different forms of abuse they endured was emotional for me. To see the emotion of the women telling their stories touched me in a way that made me think about my actions towards Wendy. I never thought about the effects my behavior could have on Wendy or the way she viewed life because of such behavior. DV helped me understand how my behavior could affect the partner's self-worth and sense of being. I feel terrible for the abusive role I played in our relationship and promise to never treat someone that way again. I'm sorry, Wendy, for all the different forms of abuse I put you through. McDougal, 2014, completed Alternative to Violence, AVP Basic. This program was intensive. It made me open up and want to participate. I was able to tell my story openly and express that I was wrong for what I did. AVP helped me learn to take a moment and think about my frustration before it turns to anger. I learned coping skills and dealing with anger that include thinking before I act, respecting others, and considering the consequences acting out of anger can create. McDougal, 2015, completed AVP Advanced. This was a more in-depth version of AVP Basic. In participating, I gained understanding on the roots of my anger. I learned that my anger stems from the different forms of neglect and lack of guidance from my father. I love my father and really looked up to him, but he was incapable of doing the right thing for himself, let alone for me. As I got older, I just buried how I felt and never talked about it. Eventually, my feelings manifested into anger, causing me to become erratic and impulsive in stressful situations. McDougal, 2015, completed People Empowering People. This program helped me become a more positive person and empowered me to look at my prison sentence as a learning experience. PEP helped me focus on educating myself instead of worrying about what I was missing in life from being incarcerated. I used the mentality that I developed from PEP to try and help other inmates consider their prison sentences in a different light. The program motivated me to do a correspondence fitness and nutrition course that I completed in 2015. McDougal, 2016, I completed Voices. This program was parallel to domestic violence for me. Listening to the victims tell their stories in the videos and seeing the emotion in certain parts of their stories resonated with me. The videos from both Voices and domestic violence made me think about how Wendy's family must feel when he talks to other people about the loss and pain I've caused them. Osborne, 2021, completed Tier 4 drug treatment. This program was a 6-month therapy community that focused on drug addiction. The Tier 4 step work assignments and groups I attended helped me analyze my addiction. As a member of the program, I learned that I was a functioning addict, that is, someone who was able to maintain a full-time job and most of their financial responsibilities while using drugs and alcohol on a daily basis. Prior to Tier 4, I always thought an addict was someone with no job and did whatever necessary to get high. I was wrong to believe that, where the program educated me on what addiction really is. Tier 4 also helped me identify my control issues. I realized that I never had control over my own life because my addiction controlled the choices I made. This led me to try to control whatever situations I could to make myself feel like I was in control of my life. I was wrong for this mentality, and I'm aware of it today because this is one of the many forms of behaviors that stem from addiction. Brooklyn, 2023, completed AVP training for trainers, T for T. This training taught me the facilitation and mentoring skills that can benefit me in all aspects of life. I learned how to approach a problematic situation using patience and understanding as a form of de-escalation to avoid negative consequences. After receiving this training, I became a facilitator for the AVP program here at Brooklyn CI. Facilitating AVP allows me to use the changes I've made in myself to help other inmates seek alternatives to violence. I'm able to stand in front of a group of 20 inmates and express that I was wrong for my violent act and that there was a non-violent alternative in my situation. I enjoy trying to send a message to AVP participants that all of our actions have a consequence that could easily be blurred by anger. And it's our responsibility as men to seek a non-violent path to avoid hurting ourselves, the people we love, and the people around us. Having the ability to identify anger as it arises and maintain self-control under such circumstances is vital to my rehabilitation and is something that I will try to relay to AVP participants. I believe that group participants understand the premise of what I discussed as a facilitator, and I hope it helps them in the future. In addition to my rehabilitation, I've also made it my priority to acquire a college education. Since 2018, I've taken full advantage of the second chance Pell Grant available to me for college classes. I started taking classes while at Rogalski CI, earning a 39-credit certificate in environmental health and safety management from Three Rivers Community College. Then I began Three Rivers Marketing Certificate and earned an additional 30 credits before Rogalski closed down. Now I am currently attending classes here at Brooklyn CI for an associate's degree in business management at Quinnipiac Valley Community College. To improve my ability to work with people, I tutor classes for Counselor Tramontano. I help the college instructors and my classmates in any way I can with work assignments. Plus, I mentor in the Brooklyn CI CDL program for instructor Cruz. I bring my knowledge and real-world experience in truck driving to assist the class with how to drive the tractor-trailer simulator. Brooklyn CI also has a program that I manage called Brooklyn Cares. I work with Louise Downer in handling the facility snack bar that distributes ice cream, popcorn, and soda to the inmate population for proceeds. These proceeds are then distributed to local domestic violence shelters as contributions to help them. My responsibilities are overseeing the distribution of snack bar to other inmates' inventory and supply orders. The opportunity to be part of this program is something I truly appreciate because it's a way for me to give back. Attending college classes, tutoring classes, facilitating AVP, mentoring in CDL, and managing snack bars drastically reshape my perspective in life. If I can help one person try to change the course of their life in a better direction, that can have a positive impact on all the people in that one person's life. This is the ripple effect I understand today because of the lives that were shattered from my poor choices. I have taken so much from people in a bad way that it's my turn to give back any way I can. I'm truly sorry, Jane, for the pain I have caused you and your family. I understand some of the emotions you go through because I go through my own emotions when I think about Wendy and what I did. The two of you have done so much for me, believing I was a good person, and this is not how I meant to repay you. The changes I have made to become a better person are for all of us. I know deep in my heart that Wendy forgives me on the condition that I learned from her loss. I was given another chance at life, and I owe it to everyone affected by my actions, including myself, to be the better person I am expected to be. With respect to being that better person, I have been establishing myself for reintegration back into society. I currently have a valid state ID, checking and savings account, and active cell phone under my name. My mother also put me on a credit card trade line to help me build my personal credit. In addition to creating some economic existence, my mother has been helping me job search online. We found potential employment at Pursuit Aerospace in Plainville and Manchester, Connecticut. Pursuit Aerospace is a manufacturing company that currently employs inmates directly from the Brooklyn, Willard, Cybulski, and York correctional institutions. This company has first and second shift job intern openings in our maintenance, machining, inspection, and safety departments at both locations. My degree for environmental health and safety management was specifically designed for working in manufacturing and qualifies me for the available positions. Starting salaries at both locations are between $20 to $24 an hour, where transportation to and from these locations will not be an issue. Furthermore, my friend Sarah Bennett helped me.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. My friend Sarah Bennett helped me pay for my 2015 certification in fitness and nutrition from Stanford Institute. Sarah has found me fitness trainer openings at Planet Fitness in Waterbury, Connecticut. Fitness trainer salaries at Planet Fitness are based on experience and ability to work with people in a positive manner. This certification, plus my tutoring, mentoring, and facilitation skills, make me a candidate for these openings. My support system is there for me, and this Planet Fitness facility is close to my residence in Watertown. Everything I've learned in my incarceration gives me the confidence to know I'm ready to go home and make the right choices. I understand how to have healthy relationships with people through an open mind, understanding, and respect. I express this because me and Sarah have known each other for many years. Sarah lost her job, leaving her unable to pay phone bills. Then there was a change that the pandemic brought into Sarah's life where our marriage became unsustainable for her. I understood Sarah's position with an open mind and we agreed on a divorce. I respected that she needed to cope with life changes on her own terms, and it was easier to have Sarah complete the separation process on the outside. Our divorce was finalized in June 2021. Today, me and Sarah talk all the time, and she is a big part of my support system. My biggest reason why I vote to be granted parole is so I can be there for my mother and brothers. My relationship with them has grown to be the best it's ever been. They have been there for me for my entire incarceration with all love and support a small family could have. Now it's my turn to be there for them, to help with the bills, home repairs, and my mother's medical issues. I regret being selfish in life while growing up and distancing myself from my mother and brothers because they're all the family I have. So for me to be able to come home early on parole, to be there for them is something I truly wish for. I'm ready to be there for them in a positive way and live a productive life. I have a plan to build my future with realistic goals. My initial priorities in the first 3 months upon release are to obtain immediate employment, restore my driver's license, and register the car my brother gave me. Once I establish that level of independence, I can focus on restoring my Class A CDL and save money for a down payment to finance a used triaxle dump truck. My first year goal is to be working for myself as a dump truck owner operator hauling aggregates throughout Connecticut. My long-term goal is to have 4 dump trucks with 5 employees. I have the support system that is willing to help me reach my goals and be successful with these plans. I envision myself as a small business owner who is able to give back to his community by contributing to environmental cleanups where needed. In closing this statement, I cannot express in words my remorse for the pain I've caused the Jackson family, my family, and myself. All I can do is my best to show with action everyone that I've hurt that I am a changed man from the time I've spent incarcerated. I wake up every day knowing Wendy is gone because of my reckless action and that I will never be able to lessen the burden I've created. I truly wish I could go back to the night of June 13, 2007 and walk away from the situation. If I could, Wendy would still be with us today and my escape would never have happened. I deeply regret my actions that have us here today because our lives are forever changed because of them. I deserve the punishment I received from the Litchfield Court 2007, and owe my deepest apologies to everyone I've affected. I will strive to be a better person I am expected to be upon my release, and thank everyone for their time and letting me speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perillo. Certainly that was a very well thought out and thorough statement that answers so many questions that we usually have. You know, a lot went into that. How long did it take you to write that?
About 3 weeks.
Yeah. So what happens here and why we're here today is to decide if you're suitable to go back out into the community on parole.
Okay.
And in order to do that, what we've done is we've read about your background,
Okay.
about this offense, about what you've done since you've been incarcerated.
Yes.
Based upon those things, we have some questions for you. So we're going to go through the three of us and ask you some questions. Then we're going to hear from the victim's family.
Mhm.
And during that time, there is no talking on your part. You can't.
I
You
understand.
can't. Okay. And then we're going to talk about your case, and we're going to give you. We're going to give you a decision today. Okay.
I understand.
And we're going to start today with Board Member Chance.
Yes, so, Mr. Perillo, as the chair said, I read all your documents and you had a very long opening statement. I just have one or two follow-up questions.
Yes.
I'm still trying to understand, at the time of the incident, you said that you basically punched the victim and then left.
Yes. Yeah, well, what happened was I was trying to leave and she was trying to keep me from leaving and I punched her and I left. And then I lied to the police. I came back. She had called me and I came back, but it's still more fighting. So I just ended up leaving, but she didn't look like she was dying. I didn't know that she had sustained an injury. So I
What
left.
did she say to you when she called you after you punched her and left?
She was, why are you leaving? Why do you always leave me? Because that's why we would always fight, is because we get into the arguments and I'll leave. And I think we both, I don't know, didn't know how to like walk away from our issues. So it was, I go back and forth with her all the time, and I would leave and then come back and then leave and come back. And I can't explain the dynamics of our relationship, but it was.
So but wait a minute. So if I get this right, you punched her, left, she called you, you went back.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you didn't see any indication that she was feeling well?
But she was laying on the couch when I came back, but she didn't tell me like she felt differently. I asked her if she wanted to go to the hospital, but that was just common sense to ask. You know, I love her and I care about her. If she was hurt, I would have brought her to the hospital. It was a minute up the road, but she was still like mad and yelling at me. So I just left.
Yeah. So, okay. So then now you get arrested.
Yes.
And then what were your thoughts as you were escaping? What were you thinking?
I wasn't thinking. I was just scared. I didn't want to face the consequences. I couldn't take responsibility for what I did. I didn't even know where to begin on that. And I impulsively escaped. And I regret that today. I just wasn't thinking.
Okay, well, thank you for answering my questions. I just also want you to know that there is a letter of support from your mother and your sister and family.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Board Member Page.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Mr. Perillo, is it possible that something other than your just striking the victim one time is it possible that something more than that happened?
No, I punched her and she fell. The way that she fell was against and under a table. And I mean, I tried to explain to my attorney that I don't think it was the punch that was the direct cause of the injury. I think it was the way that she fell, but I'm not a pathologist and I can't prove that, but
we're not asking you to prove what caused that. What I'm asking
Yes.
how you contributed to this, because in our records, it indicates that there was a history of domestic violence in your
Yes.
household. And the victim was found, 3 days later, if the records are accurate. She was found with her pants pulled down and her shirt was lifted up. And,
Yes.
I'm just trying to gain a better understanding of how she was found that way.
Yeah.
Is it possible that you were so heavily inebriated that you don't recall what truly transpired?
No, I didn't. I understand that was a thing in the case, and I don't know what would be going through her head to have her do that. But I certainly didn't go back and try to alter anything. She was still alive when I left the apartment the second time, and I don't know what happened after that. And it's been an issue in the case, and I had asked if they could fingerprint and stuff like that, but they never did. But the body and everything.
So, Mr. Carrillo, I appreciate that statement. When you were speaking with my colleague, you said that you asked the victim if she wanted to go to the hospital prior to your leaving that last time.
Yes.
Why wouldn't you go back the next day and check on her?
Well, I mean, we had fights like this before, and when that would happen, I would leave.
But I'm going to stop you.
Okay.
I understand that. I did read that that's how you guys handled things previously. But if you thought that she was so severely injured that you could inquire about bringing her to a hospital, I think that has that happened before, where she was so injured that you would ask her if she wanted to go to the hospital?
No.
Okay. So on this time, it was a little bit different. You asked her if she needed to go to the hospital. So why wouldn't you go back and check to see if she was okay?
I didn't want to engage in any more fighting with her after I left the second time, because she was yelling at me when I came back the second time. And that's why I asked, do you want me to bring it up? I was trying to be there for her in any way I could, but just I couldn't do it under the circumstance. So I just left. But I didn't want to come back a third time and then end up fighting again. So those are the main reason why I try to go.
Okay. All right. So Mr. Carrillo, I'm sure the chair said this already, but we really are not here to determine your guilt or innocence. In our eyes, you were convicted of this offense, and that's what we're going to base our decision on here today. It's really your suitability. It's not about whether or not you did this or you didn't do it. You were convicted of it.
Okay.
So I am curious to know, because you were on probation and parole at the time that this offense was committed. Did you ever have to engage in? Yeah, you were on parole. I see. Yes, you were. So, because you were on from 11/30/2006, your parole started. And when you came back on a violation in July for this offense.
Yeah.
I showed that you were also on probation for.
It was the time that my parole was transferring to probation.
Okay.
Right at that time.
Okay. All right. So, were you engaged in any treatment at that point to address your substance abuse problem or your domestic violence issues?
I did the MCCA outpatient drug treatment. I did that when I got out in November, so December. It was a 4-week program. I was stipulated to do that, and I did that in December But
Okay, so-
it never
But
had.
they never, no DV ever, is what you were
I
gonna
never
say?
had domestic violence issues, so I didn't have to do that.
So
Like,
you just said, but you did have, the police just didn't know that you had those domestic violence issues.
Yeah, with the relationship, but I never had like previous DV stuff, so.
All right, so my next question to you is, when you were released from prison in that November, and
Yes,
you completed the drug treatment, you said in that December, what caused your relapse?
that was our relationship. I know, like, when I was reading my statement and stuff, it's uncomfortable for Jane to hear. And I was just trying to go through my history of like what our relationship was like, but we were no good for each other. We were each other's.
Okay, so again, so you were clean and sober, and when you walked out of the prison doors, and within how many days had you relapsed?
Probably after I finished the MCCA stuff. I left the halfway house and went home from a halfway house, and then I did the MCCA. But it was shortly after that we started using again.
And one, I heard in your opening statement, and I appreciate all the information that you did provide. And I wish I understand. You went over all your programming. You went over your history as a child. Much of that stuff we reviewed from reading your file in preparation for today. But
Okay.
I appreciate your sharing what you've learned, and because as the chair said, that is some of the things that we ask. But one of the things that caught my attention was that you met and married someone while you've been in prison.
Yes, so my friend Sarah Bennett, we've always talked. She's been there for me over the years, before this, through this, and we wanted to be together, so we got married. But COVID just
How could you
killed.
be together in prison?
Well, our phone calls and visits, and we were very communicative. She came up to visit me 2 or 3 times a week, and we talked every day. And a relationship developed like that. I listened to her; she could talk to me, and we loved each other. We still love each other, and I wanted to come home and have a life with her. But COVID just it killed us.
I'm just curious. That's so interesting that you would marry she knew that you wouldn't be back out into the community possibly until 2026.
Yes.
So it's just interesting to hear that you met and married someone and divorced so quickly. Is it possible that you were maybe involved with that person prior to?
So we had a relationship in the early 2000s, and then she was in a long-term relationship. From that, I want to say we were together 96 and to about 2000, and then we broke
You went
up.
your separate ways, and then you came back.
But we still talked.
Right? Yeah. You said,
Yeah.
Okay.
But she got involved with somebody else.
And now you have a new girlfriend, right, Crystal?
Yes.
Okay. And how long have you been dating her?
About 3 years. We've been talking. She's a girlfriend, but she's free to do whatever she wants to do, live her life how she wants to live it. We can't have a relationship in here. I mean, it's nice to have somebody answer my calls. It's nice to have somebody be supportive, to have that love on the outside. I miss that. And it's good to have that. And I have a new perspective, so I'm a good listener, and I offer my advice, and I know how to have a good relationship today. And I thank that for facilitating groups and developing relationships with inmates. So I know how to have a healthy relationship today. I understand.
That's good. That's a good thing. I'm glad that you've learned that, because it's obvious that your prior one was not, the healthiest. And I was just asking that because, and I'm glad to hear you say that. It sounds like you learned from your relationship with Sarah that it's impossible really to have a relationship while you're in prison. But I appreciate your responses to my questions. Mr. Perillo, you have not had any disciplinary infractions in over
May of
13 years.
2012. Yes,
Yeah.
May 2012 was my last one.
And you've participated in a number of positive programs. Sounds like you've gained some insight since you've been in there. You've tried to educate yourself as best you could. You really did try to make the best out of this horrible situation. So I commend you on your efforts, and I appreciate our discussion here today. And I do wish you the best of luck.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sir Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Page. Mr. Perillo, just I wanted to cover real quick because one of the catalysts in this whole thing was substance use.
Yes.
And you did a great job talking about release plans and short-term and long-term goals, things like that. What's your recovery plan?
I know, if I was to make parole, and even if I, went on probation, I'll be stipulated to do programs. And I would like to be involved in giving more back to the programs that I have to do. That's it's like a gateway for me to maintain vigilant about my surroundings and what it is that I'm doing. So when I do participate in my programs on the outside, I'll be able to ask the counselors stuff. How can I be involved to further?
Oh, no.
So I want to be, like I did in here. I did the programs, and then I wanted to be part of them. So that's how I became part of my mentoring and doing the facilitation. So I'd like to use that same approach on the outside when I talk with counselors and get involved with my program on the outside to continue doing it.
Okay, so for ongoing recovery, what's your plan?
I want to say become a substance abuse counselor, but maybe like a substance abuse mentor for the counselors at the whatever MCCA or whatever it is I'm stipulated to go to. When that door opens, I'll be able to further my participation after I've completed my what I'm stipulated to do. So to continue engaged in helping other people with my story and how it could change them if they continue
Okay.
to.
And that's a really good. Those are really good things. And for long-term recovery, that's something that's really, really important. I guess just to narrow, to narrow in even further, what are you going to do for your own recovery when you are released? Because if I'm, listening to the story, listening to your story and seeing what it is that you consumed,
Yeah.
It doesn't go away, right?
People, places, and things. That's the most important thing I have to be. So it's the people I associate with, the places I go, and the things that I'm currently doing. So that's like the biggest step to staying sober. Stay away from the people that are not good for me, which I can identify. That's the most important factor. And then the places I go, like bars, and you can't do that stuff and expect to live a sober life. And then the things that I do. So
that's often said when we come here, but it's not often explained exactly the way that you just explained it. So it's really important that it's just not something that's being recited. But again, it's like, do you plan on going to meetings?
Oh, yes, NA, AA. I look forward to sharing.
Okay.
So being able to share with other people it keeps my mind vigilant on what I've been through and where I want to go. So sharing is a big part of it.
Is there a difference between staying clean on the inside and staying clean on the outside?
I think the difference the influence. I mean, in here, we have everything that goes on in here. I fell victim to it in 2011, but
Yep.
I don't want to end up like my father.
Yep.
You know, I'm already 45 here. I came into jail at 28. I'm 45, and I don't want to be like him. I'm not trying to use him as a bad example, but I have to use him for an example because I looked up to him. So for me, you know, I just changed. I don't want to get high. I don't want to drink. I don't miss feeling the way that I did. I don't miss
Right. So one thing I'd suggest is, do you have any kind of relationships with Rex?
I know Rex, yes.
So
I talk with him.
it would be really good to talk to him about recovery coach opportunities
Okay.
for yourself, not being one,
Okay.
but getting one,
Yes.
right? So
to be one, I would have to have one too. So yes.
that's helpful as you transition out into the community,
Yes.
right? You've done
Yes,
a lot of
totally
work.
agree.
Done a lot of work on the inside, but that work has to be done on the outside as well, and it's different. It really is different.
I understand
Right?
that.
When we got released from New York, how many days did it take?
I was in work
5.
release.
Didn't you say 5 days? 5 days and you're back at it, right?
Yes, yes.
When the support as you're released is critical for your success.
I understand that.
At this time, Mr. Perillo, we're done with questioning. I'm going to recognize the Office of Victim Services, and they're going to facilitate victim input into the case. I remind you that there is no talking at all.
I understand.
Okay. Good morning, Ms. Hamlet Williams.
Good morning, panel. Good morning, Sir Chair. I do have the family of the victim who would like to address the panel today. And we will begin first with the mother of the victim who is joining us via Teams. Then I will be contacting the victim's brother as well as her son. One moment. You may begin with your statement.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Good morning. This is Jane Jackson, Wendy's mother. This is going to be very difficult for me. It has brought up a lot of issues listening to Russell. June 16th, 2007 is a day that changed my life forever. My beautiful daughter was found dead in her apartment. This was a pain like no other. I was told that 2 weeks later that her husband, Russell Perillo, had violently attacked her and left her to die. My 13-year-old child was left without a mother. To listen to what Russ had to say and all the things he's accomplished while he's in jail mean nothing to me. My child is dead and gone forever. Russell knew how much of a relationship I had with my child. All of this talk about the night Wendy was murdered, Russell failed to include the fact that he left her dead and came back and she was already dead. He did not call the police. He did not do anything. He left her lay on her floor until she was discovered by her best friend 3 days later. It wasn't a push or a shove. The medical examiner has it in writing. She was either stomped to death. It split her kidneys in half. This was not just a little argument. Within 10 to 15 minutes. And after that, for 2 to 3 weeks, Russell was with the family, didn't know what happened, walked up the aisle of the church with my daughter's casket in front, holding Dylan's, her son's hand, as if He had nothing to do with this. This went on for weeks before the police finally found exactly what had happened. I can't even begin to explain the pain that we've gone through. It may be 18 years or 15 for Russ, but for us, it's a lifetime. Wendy was a loving, loving young woman. This was not an isolated incident. The place where she was going, the domestic violence counselors had said Wendy had been coming in for months with bruises on her abdomen, places where it couldn't be seen. I saw my daughter with a black eye. I begged her to leave him. She didn't, and now she's gone. As far as Russell's comments about this Sarah Bennett, I have before me texts, a whole feed of texts that came from Sarah Bennett to me after I made a comment when I saw her sitting on a countertop in the jail holding a bottle of champagne with her bridal veil on. And yes, I said, "What are you doing? This man murdered my child." I then received these texts. The one says, "This is from Russell. There is no reason for this type of behavior. There is no need for a social media war with personal items."
Ms. Hamlet Williams. So we really, Ms. Jackson, we really need to have input from you as to how this would affect you and your family, please.
Well, it goes without saying. My child is gone. For him to be released, there's no release for our pain. Wendy is 6 feet in the ground. No, he needs to serve out his time. And I'm only responding to this letter to facts that are not true. I mean, how can you listen to all of these things he's saying when in fact 50% are not true? And of course he's done all these things in jail. Did he have a choice? My point was, in reading this about Sarah Bennett, is she put right in there that he is still abusive financially and verbally. This was 3 years ago. So suddenly there's an epiphany and he's not doing this anymore. I watch my grandson every day missing his mother. He now has 2 children of his own that will never know their grandmother. Every time I look at them, the pain is intensified knowing what they are missing out on because my beautiful daughter is no longer here. I am asking the board to please let him live out his sentence because my child, we were all sentenced to a life of misery without her. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you so much for your statement. One moment. You may begin with your statement.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. My name is Roger Guerin. I'm the brother of Wendy, the victim. The devastating impact, excuse me, the devastating impact of Wendy being murdered by her husband has been life-altering. I will never forget the phone call I got that evening from Galen telling me my sister was dead. I tried to get a hold of my mother immediately, but with no luck. So I immediately called Dad and had to break the most heartbreaking news to him. When I told him The moans and the crying were undescribable. When I did finally get to my mother, the emotion was uncontrollable and gut-wrenching. And an even harder task was to tell Wendy's son, Dylan, who at the time was 13, that his mother was dead. For me to watch all their reactions was the hardest thing I've ever dealt with to this day. A few short days later, as I was staying with my parents, trying to make funeral arrangements together, I had to call 911 and watch my dad taken by ambulance to the hospital for a possible heart attack, for which it was not. It was a panic attack from all the grief and stress. While all this was going on, Wendy's husband went on as if he had no idea who could have done this. As we now know, he was the one who murdered my sister. My mother, to this day, cannot sleep and mourns my sister every day. That horrible, dreadful day, I not only lost my sister, but I also lost my mother, because she has never been the same, nor will she ever be the same. The only way we get to visit Wendy is at the cemetery. So therefore, I can't see how it could be fair at any level to let him free before his full sentence is served. So I am totally against any parole or release. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hamlin Williams, is that all?
I think it's.
No, I think it's
I
son.
thought there's one more there, right?
Yeah, it's son. It's son, I think.
That's what I thought.
You may begin with your statement.
Good morning. I would like to start this letter by thanking you all for the opportunity to speak today and ask for patience as I try and get through reading this, as it is my first time speaking publicly on the death of my mother. As much as I would like to take the time to speak of fond memories of my mother, I will keep the focus and input on my feelings of Mr. Perillo's early release. Over the years, Mr. Perillo has tried on several occasions to apply for early release, but as the completion of his sentence comes near, I felt an obligation to have my input. I felt an obligation to have my input heard for his last application and bring some light to some information that I feel is crucial to the board's decision of releasing Mr. Perillo. I was living with my maternal grandparents throughout my childhood, but had a very close relationship with my mother and saw her weekly to bi-weekly. I was first introduced to Mr. Perillo roughly 3 to 4 years prior to her death as my mother's new boyfriend. My first impressions of Mr. Perillo was that he was quiet but seemed nice. Over more interactions and time spent together, I began to trust Mr. Perillo and became fond of him, with him even confessing to my mother and grandmother he wanted to be a father figure to me and a part of my life, as I did not have my own father in my life. I began to trust him. That was quickly shattered when signs of physical abuse became very apparent in his relationship with my mother. The first day of summer of me transitioning from 7th to 8th grade, I was awoken by pretty much all of my immediate family to tell me that my mother had passed the night before. All I remember from this time period was the immense feelings of being lost and confused. Nobody would tell me how or why my mother had passed, and because of my age, I was left out of a lot of the discussions. Over the course of the next week, we all attended the funeral of my mother, which Mr. Perillo attended, and I quite vividly remember holding my hand and walking me down to see my mother for the last time. I had already planned to attend an art camp that summer, and my family thought that it would be best for me to go to keep my mind busy. A few weeks into my time at this art camp, I was requested to come to the office because I had a visitor. Much to my surprise, it was Mr. Perillo. We walked up to a picnic bench and sat down, and he placed his arm around me as we began to make small talk about how my time at camp was going and how I was doing. After speaking for a few moments, I looked at Mr. Perillo and asked him what he had thought happened to my mother, and he turned to me and said, "I'm sure they will find out soon." We said our goodbyes, and that was the last time since 2007 I've spoken to Mr. Perillo. The next day after this visit, Mr. Perillo was arrested after the police investigation and autopsy returned showing her cause of death, and that the gas station cameras facing their apartment showed him leaving and then returning for his personal items and then not returning after. Mr. Perillo, at every opportunity since that day, has tried to minimize and deflect his role in my mother's death. Mr. Perillo held my hand at her funeral, knowing he was the cause of her horrible death. Mr. Perillo visited me at camp and told me the police would probably find out eventually what happened to her. And then to top this all off, Mr. Perillo escaped custody of the marshals while being escorted to her court appointment, which resulted in my school locking me in a room in fear that he would try and come see me, and my entire town ultimately knowing what happened to me when they released my name on the news. 17 years later, I am now 30 years old with 2 children of my own, but I still have moments where I feel like that lost and confused 13-year-old child. Mr. Perillo's actions has shaped and defined over half my life, including my own personal relationships with people. When push came to shove, Mr. Perillo was always minimized and tried to push blame on everything else, including my mother, all while only receiving a 10-year sentence for what, in my personal opinion, should have been life. I know in my heart my mother would want me to forgive Mr. Perillo, and someday for my own sake, I hope I can do that. But I do not feel his original sentencing was even appropriate, and that is why I would please ask the board to deny this request. Mr. Perillo has close ties to the town that I now reside in, the same town my mother passed away in. And the thought of pumping gas or running into the store to grab groceries and coming face to face with Mr. Perillo is deeply upsetting to me. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today.
Thank you so much for your statement. Thank you, panel.
Thank you, Ms. Hamlin-Williams, and to mother and brother and son, thank you for giving input, because it's really important that we hear from family during these proceedings. Mr. Perillo, we are going to discuss your case now, and you can listen to us as we move forward, okay?
Okay.
Board Member Chan.
Mr. Perillo. So, Mr. Perillo has done pretty well in terms of the last 13 years. He has not received any DRs. He took several positive programs. And I think one of the most important things that he learned was how to have a healthy relationship. For his employment, he has a solid release plan with family support, long short employment goals. He has utilized his mentorship skills to assist others and wants to become a substance abuse counselor or mentor so that he can continue to assist others in the community. For his own recovery, he identified that people face some things, which a lot of people do, and he explained what he meant by people, that, he needs to stay away, negative people don't contribute positively in his life. Places, he needs to stay away from places like bars and all those kinds of things. And things are, he needs to do positive things. It was recommended to him that he obtain a recovery coach to assist himself. And so for that, he has done well. I want to just, talk about the victim to the impact, because I certainly cannot feel what they feel. But, the mother spoke on the phone, and her expression of how the incident happened is, slightly different than what the offender has said. She also indicated that her daughter was going to do the counseling prior to her death, and spoke about her son. Her grandson at the time was only 13 years old, and feels strongly that, he attacked the victim and left her to die. Just to go back to what she said about the victim's son, that he now has 2 children. So she's now a great grandmother, and her daughter is not here to experience being a grandmother. Her brother spoke about the life-altering event that occurred for him when he heard about the death of his sister, and how emotionally he was his emotions were just extremely uncontrollable. And he also referenced in his thoughts about his 13-year-old nephew. He also shared about his dad, who had to be taken to the hospital because he had a panic attack. And the loss of his sister, when he lost her, he also lost his mother, because she has not been able to continue to live a normal life without her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, the victim's son spoke about he being very emotional, and talked about how he met the offender prior to her death, and how they became very fond of each other, and so he trusted him. And at the age of 13, that relationship was important to him, because he did not have a father figure in his life. He talked about the decision by his grandmother and his uncle to have him go to camp as a way of helping him, deal with the death of his mother at age 13. He indicated that the offender came to visit him, and, when he asked, he said to him, well, soon they're going to figure out what happened. And at this point, at age 30, the victim's son feels that the offender has minimized his role in the death of his mother, and that 17 years later, at age 30, he's still experiencing problems in dealing with the death of his mother. He is extremely concerned about the offender being released to the town in which he now lives in, and fears the thought of running into the offender being extremely scary for him. All three victims' input have requested that they are not in favor of early release for the offender today. This is an extremely difficult situation in weighing what the offender has done and the impact to the victim. The time that they're asking for him to complete his sentence, I believe it's a year, a little over a year, I don't know.
February 26th.
Yeah, so it's like maybe a year and a half. In just nothing will bring the victim, but just the severe impact to the three members of the victim family is extremely concerning and weighing on one hand versus the other. I feel having Mr. Perello do the year and a half would be appropriate.
Board Member Page.
Thank you, Sir Chair. You know, Mr. Carrillo has done everything that we would have liked an offender to see. I think that he absolutely has shown that he has worked hard at his recovery and his rehabilitation. It sounds as if he has a viable release plan along with a substantial support in the community. We've received many of those letters that were written. I do commend his efforts to turn his life around, and it sounds as if he's really on a positive path to be successful. I too am going to vote to deny Mr. Perillo's request for discretionary parole. Not because I do not believe that he is an appropriate candidate, but I do believe that the impact and the injury to the family is faithfully. I just and it's not to be punitive, but I can't even imagine what. Honestly, although I can appreciate the mother's statement, the son's statement was the most impactful, and the vivid memories that he has, and those memories will never go away. And so, for those reasons, I would deny him as well, not to negate any of the good things that he's done.
Right.
That's why I went over, all the really positive things that he did, because I thought it was wrong to do that.
That's yeah, absolutely.
He's done very well.
So there isn't any doubt, Mr. Perillo, that you're headed in the right direction. There is no changing what happened. There is no consoling the victims in this case. It's just that's a loss that will be with them for the rest of their lives, But what you've done in terms of being involved with programming and how you've risen to be a mentor with the Alternatives to Violence program, and what you've done with education, and that's incredibly important. You you've done really well, you know. And certainly, you know, it's the February 26th is what your absolute end of sentence is before you go out on probation for 5 years. And you know, for me, as you know, as was stated by board member Page, the impact to the son in this case, being in the same town of 22,000 that you want to release to, you know, gives me pause. To the point that, you know, you're working on your degree. You're doing positive things. And based upon that, as well as, you know, you've done the other piece. I got one more question. Did you become a tutor for the CDL program?
Yes, well, tutor slash mentor.
So, you know, again, with that, you know, the positive things that you continue to do are very important. As such, in regard to Russell Perillo 294689, I move to deny parole based upon nature and circumstances of the current offense and the injury and impact to the victim or victim's family. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Mr. Perillo, we couldn't give you parole today, but we do. The message here is that please continue to do what you're doing because you're doing the right thing. Okay.
All right.
And to the family, please, thank you for coming and sharing your loss and impact with us.
Mr. Pearl, you're all set. You'll get all your paperwork next week.
All right, thank you.
We'll just
You're
take,
welcome.
Another frustrating hearing is just the certain things that the parole board says and does. It really irks me. This was the same day that they had that parole hearing for that monster, if you can dare call him a father, who had done it to his 2 daughters from the age of for 8 years straight, starting at the age of 2. It's the same board, the same thing, and it's just crazy to listen. And I hope you're okay with the idea that I sped up his opening remarks. I personally was so angry listening to it that I didn't want to put you guys through it, but leave in the comment section if it's not something you want me to do. Yeah, then Miss Chance actually says, she says at the end there, it seems really great that you figured out relationships. You figured out how to have healthy relationships. And it's like, what? While he's in prison, he gets married and divorced? And the divorcee actually has a letter which the grieving mother is trying to get across, but she's interrupted. And like, hello, she even is saying that the guy's a control freak, that he's abusive. He hasn't learned anything. That was 4 years ago. I see, you know, it's interesting. I see a lot, and we'll go over this, the documentation, the information. I see a lot of these comment sections, and people are writing like, "Wow, how is it that these guys are getting girlfriends? Like, I'm hardworking, I'm single, I'm doing this, I'm doing that," and you see these monsters that get girlfriends and married in prison, and it's like, what is going on? And it's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I really, I have spoken to a few that have gotten married to people locked up, and certain things that the information they've shared with me help me understand it. In some ways, they feel safe, right? Their significant other is locked up. They know where they are. They like that. They can't get hurt from them physically. And the person in prison is very attentive. They write letters, something, in a lost art that doesn't happen anymore. They obsess over them. And there's something, so there's reasons for it. Although, I just, can you imagine marrying a wife someone who killed her own. It's just, but that's neither here nor there. He starts off with the whole parole hearing. He starts off with his opening statements trying to drag his ex-wife, who he killed, drag her through the mud. Everything's her fault. Oh, I came back from prison. I was sober. I was great. And then she dragged me back into it. It's all her fault. I mean, that's literally how he started. Mike Paul then cut him off and said, this is not, stop about this. But it was like, then he's fake crying. I mean, we have seen a lot of fake cries, and that's why I zoomed in there. The tissue is dry as sandpaper. He can't even, the fake crying, it's ridiculous. And then he can't even help himself. But when the grieving mother is speaking, he is rolling his eyes. Can you imagine a man who beats her so significantly, and like the way that they did the questions, like, when you came back, is it possible that, and at least they ask questions, because in these parole hearings, they don't really ask questions. So, I mean, we have to give them some credit for at least asking him some questions, which is a nice change of how things so often go at these hearings. And he's just like straight up, no, I mean, I have no idea why. I don't know what she did when I left. She must have taken her clothes off. It was like, or he's alluding to someone else breaking in. But hey, had he done anything? No. And just speculation. I'm speculating on a situation like this. I wonder if he went back there and took her clothes off, not only to embarrass her, but to make it look like someone else had gone there to do something to her, so as an alibi. That's how little this monster cares. Of course, going down, the funeral and the fake cries, and even going to her son like the day before, it's like the whole thing. He's such a cockroach. He's such a monster, and then the DA somehow gives 15 years. I mean, it's a 20-year sentence, but 5 years suspended and 5 years, bro. It's like 15 years, man. Wow, you guys are really keeping Connecticut safe. Good job. Pat yourself on the back. Another one in the win column. It's crazy. We live in a crazy world. All this pain from the family that they have to go through. And then you hear the parole board, you're doing great. You're doing a great job. You really figured out relationships. It's like, what are you talking about? Thank you, Richard, for this information. We have something in common. We were afraid of being alone, Prillo told Litchfield Superior Court Judge Michael Sheldon. Prillo of Bethel was sentenced Thursday to serve 20 years in prison in the death of his 35-year-old wife, Wendy Lou Jackson. He was charged with first-degree manslaughter on July 31st for leaving Wendy to die there in their home. Now my wife is alone, Perillo said. I am alone. Is it even these following remarks are so sick, so self-serving, so disgusting. We had something in common. We were afraid of being alone. Like, shut up. Does he not even see the irony in that statement? You left her to die alone. They say it took her 20 minutes from internal bleeding till she died. And you're going to say we were afraid of being alone? Now my wife is alone? This is what you tell the judge? It's like, shut up. The case took a dramatic turn in the morning of November 9, 2007, when Perillo escaped from judicial marshal in Litchfield while on way to court. I don't know why they didn't slap him with more for this. They don't do that. He was caught later in the morning. Friends and family knew the couple's marriage had grown toxic. A community crisis counselor reported seeing bruises on Wendy's side a year before her death. State's attorney David Shepak said 3 months before Wendy was found dead in her home in June, a friend called police concerned for Wendy's safety. Good for that friend. After she and Perillo left the party on a motorcycle, Shepak said that what the counselor saw was bruising on her lower body, on the thorax, her sides, arms, and area not readily visible. Sheepek said it significantly resembled the mechanism of death here, a blow to the abdomen that ruptured her kidney, a blow that was fatal. And how hard do you have to hit someone to rupture a kidney? Wendy died after suffering blunt force trauma to the abdomen that caused her right kidney to break in two and bleed internally about 10 to 20 minutes. The chief state's medical examiner friends found Wendy's body in her kitchen on June 16, 2:07 a.m., police said. Perillo, 29, admitted that he punched his wife in the stomach, but said she was alive when he left. When police asked, Perillo denied abusing Wendy. Wendy was trying to distance herself from Perillo, Sheepek said, and sought help from a counselor because she was being abused physically, emotionally, and financially. She wanted more than anything. And isn't that interesting? This is the exact same statement that except it's just emotionally and financially because she can't do because that the ex-wife made. She wanted more than anything to have family. Wendy's mother, Jane Jackson, said, Wendy, a graduate of Houstonic Valley Regional High School in Fall Village, is not alive to see her teenage son, Dylan Munson, grow up. Jackson said Jackson went after her son-in-law, turned around, looked at her, and said, I'm sorry. Regardless of the sentence Sheldon handed down Thursday, Jackson said she knew Perillo would serve a self-inflicted life sentence for his senseless act of rage. Perillo didn't run from judicial marshals in November because he knew he was guilty, but because he was depressed. He felt he was at the end of his rope. Perillo used a piece of wire to unlock his handcuffs. I always am amazed by that, how handcuffs, but it seems that someone who knows how to pick a handcuff can pick a handcuff. It's so, why are they designed that way? I can't understand that. While he was being transported to Litchfield for his court date in a state van, and when the door opened, jumped out and ran through the center of town. State police found Perillo hiding behind a South Street home. He apologized to the court, causing a scene. I'm sorry. And do we see any tacked on time for that? No. I don't see anything. This one is very sad. This is like about from the mother. For nearly a year, Jane Jackson struggled with the death of her only child. It's her only child. Occasionally finding a few moments of solace paying her daughter's monthly cell phone bill and listening to her voicemail and greeting. Is there not anything more painful than that? She's paying her bill so she can hear her voice. Jackson, quivering Thursday as she read the statements to Superior Court, got some measure of redemption for her daughter. As she watched the judge send the man who killed her, it's not 20 years though. They lie 20 years. The pain of living with her is unimaginable, she said. Jackson, 35, died in New Milford apartment last June, according to the court documents. 29-year-old and her husband punched her in the stomach. She suffered a kidney. Perillo talked off the cuff without pause, tears welled in his eyes as he mentioned Jackson's suffering. I loved her as a mother too, he said. I know that she's going through. Perillo, presented by public defender Christoph, told Sheldon he never meant to kill his wife. Sometimes things just got out of hand with the two of us, he said. Yeah, okay, that's really out of hand. Sheldon said even to say those words, sometimes things got out of hand. Wow. Sheldon said he seemed a couple lived a lifestyle that wasn't conducive to common sense, and the Perillo had problems managing his anger and sense of entitlement to exact control. Yep. And now that he took some programs, he's completely cured. And it's also interesting the way that the Connecticut, they don't really seem to take things that seriously at these parole hearings. It's like, well, he obviously has a huge substance abuse problem. So what do you plan on attending AA when you get out? Not like, well, what is your plan when you get out to stay sober and see what he'll say? No, instead he starts right off with giving him the answer. Do you plan on attending AA? And he says, yes, of course. This parole board, they are just incredibly, they are lacking the skill. They finish people's sentences, they feed them answers. The more I watch these hearings, now some of them are better than others, but this group right here is just they're just missing. It's Pohl, Chance, and Page. I mean, they're just completely lacking, I think, really, from what I've seen, they just should not be holding these positions. I mean, it's bad. You know, you can't ask a question that is going to obtain an organic answer because you're giving them the answer during the question. Are you going to attend AA when you get out? Versus, what are your plans when you get out to stay sober? They don't even get it. It's disturbing. It really is. It's shocking. But anyways, I digress. Thank you, Richard, for the information. This case is painful. At least he was denied his fake little cries. But yeah, he's going to get out anyways. What's his full term date? In 2 years he gets out now? Can't make it up. And with that, I'll let you go.